Hello everybody and welcome back to my Day 4 recap for the International 2016. And today is the last day of the group stage for TI6, where top 4 teams in each group will be placed into the winner bracket and the bottom 4 will be placed in the loser bracket. And with the group being so tight in the middle, we're definitely looking at some tiebreaker scenarios. How the tiebreaker works is that the tiebreaker will only happen if 4th and 5th place are tied. So every other scenario where 1st to 3rd are tied or 6th to 8th are tied, then they will only look at head-to-head and determine their finishing. And if 4th and 5th place are tied, then extra matches will be played to determine who will be placed in the winner bracket and who will be placed into the lower bracket. And as you can see by the result here from yesterday, there are only 4 games left to play for every team today, and there are many teams that can potentially finish top 4 or bottom 4 depending on their performances today. And the only team so far that has secured a spot in the winner bracket is eHome, and no one is mathematically eliminated from getting to top 4 so far. So after an interesting last day, and this is how Group A finished. And surprisingly, no tiebreaker was needed as Alliance was barely able to scrap by EG in the last series, which allowed them to edge out TNC by 1 point. So let's talk about how each team did on the last day. And finishing first in the group was OG, even though they didn't look that convincing on the first day, but in the last 2 days, they have shown why they are perhaps the favorite to win the entire tournament. Especially because the other 3 contenders, Wings, Liquid, and Nubi, hasn't looked too good so far in the group stage. OG had a flawless day 4, finishing 4-0 by defeating TNC and Navi, and they finished the group without dropping any series at all, as they had an overall record of 11 wins and 3 losses. At second place, we have Evo Geniuses. They were ahead of OG by 1 point at the beginning of today. However, in the last 2 series, they had some slip-ups. EG won the first game very quickly against LGD, and at that point, with 9 points, they were already guaranteed top 4 finishes in Group A, which is lucky for them because they then proceeded to lose 3 games straight afterwards, as they tied with the series with LGD and lost to Alliance 0-2. Although the Alliance series had no bearing for EG whatsoever, it made all the differences for Alliance, which I will talk about later. Finishing third in the group was Wings. After a very good showing yesterday, they proceeded to have another questionable performances today. They dropped their very first 2 games against Navi, which was important because after the first set of series, Wings, Navi, and Alliance were all tied at 3rd to 5th place with 6 points each. Although Navi and Alliance both had very difficult matchups in the last series, as Navi had to play OG and Alliance had to play EG. This gave Wings somewhat favorable position because they had to play LGD last. LGD is by no means a walkover, however, once last series of the group stage, and with the difference in winner bracket and loser bracket online, I definitely would not want to play against OG or EG. And as expected, they were able to defeat LGD 2-0 in barely under 50 minutes in total, and with how the other 2 series turned out, it was enough to secure them a top 4 finish without the need of going to the tiebreakers. At 4th place, we have Alliance. Like I mentioned before, going to last series, we had 3 teams tied at 3rd to 5th place. However, Alliance also could have avoided this position, but they dropped a very close and intense 76 minutes game to escape in the first series. And even though they did win the second game convincingly, tying the first series against the 8th place team still put them in a very tough position, as their last opponent was EG. And they had to win at least 1 game, preferably both games, in order to maximize their chance of making it to winner bracket. And miraculously, they somehow was able to win both games. It honestly looked like they were about to lose the first game versus EG, but somehow, someway, they were able to defend their ancient 3v4, wiping the entire enemy team and go the other way and proceed to take game 1. I'm no conspiracy theorist, but that would be the biggest 3-2-2 if I ever saw one. I'm not saying EG threw the game, but the scenario was just way too fitting with how EG and Alliance having the same owner and all, and EG already secured the top 4 finishes, and it's a must win for Alliance. It wouldn't have hurt to throw the European brothers a bone, you know? But once again, I highly doubt EG actually threw that game, but it was just a funny scenario that occurred in perhaps one of the most important matches in Group A. And because Navi got 0-2 by OG, these 2 wins secured Alliance top 4 finish. But because their head-to-head against Wings was 0-2, so Wings placed 3rd and Alliance placed 4th in Group A. And now we move on to the bottom 4 of the group. These teams will have a tough road ahead of them, as they'll be going to the main event with only 1 lives, and not to mention they will need to play through 1 round BO1s. Which is always scary to think about, as anything can happen, especially in this patch with so many cheese drafts available. This is not a position any team would want to be in, as an upset can happen very easily in a BO1. So at 5th place was TNC, and because they started the day with 5 points, and they dropped both games to OG in their first series today, it required them to not only win the last series to have a chance of making a winner bracket, They also had to hope for the other team to lose in order for them to have a chance. And unfortunately for them, Alliance and Wings didn't drop any game in the last series. And that means that TNC will finish the group just 1 point shy of those two teams, and they will end up having to battle for the loser bracket. 6th place was Navi, and even though they were able to upset Wings in the first series, like I mentioned before, being tied with Wings and Alliance going to last series, but unfortunately for them, they were not able to pull off 2 upsets in one day, as they lost both games to OG, which meant that they will finish the group with 6 points at 6th place. At 7th place, we have LGD, who was basically on a 5-game losing streak coming into today, and it continued to a 6 as they dropped their first game to EG. Although they salvaged that series by finally ending their losing streak by beating EG in the second game, it still meant that they were only going to last series with 5 points, which meant that it would require them to win their games and hope for various results in other matches for them to have a shot at the winner bracket. But unfortunately for them, Wings came to play as they needed to win both games to secure their top 4 finishes, and by losing both games in the last series, LGD had no choice but to test their luck in the loser bracket. In the last place is of course Escape Gaming, who has not looked very good at all in the group stage. They did pick up a win in their first game against Alliance, but in order for them to make into the top 4, they needed to win every single game today, as well as have the other matches go a very specific way so that they can have a shot in the tiebreaker. But that did not happen, as the first game today was their only win, and which meant that they will finish 8th in the group. And this is the result for Group A from today, and once again, this is how the final finishing looked for Group A. Now we move on to Group B, and with the group also very tight in the middle of the table, it certainly looked like we were looking at tiebreaker scenarios. However, once again, somehow no extra matches were needed, as the day did end in some surprises for Group B. Finishing top 2 for the group was eHome and DC, and not much to say about them as they continued their hot performances from previous 2 days. And with eHome already securing their top 4 finishes yesterday, DC was also able to secure theirs today by beating Liquid 2-0 in the first series. And at 3rd place was Newbie. They won their first series convincingly against Team Secret, which meant that they had 7 points going to last series, and although that put them 2 points ahead of the following 2 teams, they still needed at least 1 win from the last series to secure their spot in the top 4, and they were able to just get that. And even though Newbie didn't look as scary as people thought they were going to be coming to the tournament, they still secured themselves a place in the upper bracket, which at the end of the day is all that matters after the group stage. And now we get into clusterfuck known as the difference between 4th and 5th place. Going to last series, we're potentially looking at a 4-way tie scenario, as however unlikely that was going to be, it actually almost happened. As in, we were literally 1 game away from having a 4-way tie from 4th to 7th place. What happened was we had MEP and Team Liquid both at 5 points, VG Gaming Reborn with 4, and Secret Fnatic with 3. And the way the matchup worked was that MEP played Newbie and Team Liquid played Secret. So if MEP and Liquid both lost 2-0, and that would put Secret, MEP, and Liquid at 5 points. And if Fnatic beat VG 2-0, or if they even tie 1-1, that would have given us a 4th team with 5 points. And that scenario actually almost happened. However, MEP saved us from such madness by taking a game off of Newbie, which pushed them past ahead of the pack with 6 points, and it barely secured them a top 4 finishes in the group. And somewhat surprisingly, finishing 5th in the group was Fnatic, who had a terrible first 2 days as they only won 2 out of the 10 games. However, this could contribute more to the fact that the other team fucked up hard on the last day, as well as they played exceptionally well against MEP and VGR. They tied a series against MEP and beat VGR 2-0, but it was not enough as their start in the first 2 days in the group was too much for them to come back from. At 6th place, also with 5 points, was Team Secret, who was on a 7-game losing streak coming into today, as they have won their first 3 games in the group, but lost the following 7. They continued their losing streaks to 9 by dropping 2 games to Newbie to begin the day, and just to look like they were going to be last in the group, they somehow beat Team Liquid 2-0, which gave them a slim chance at a tiebreaker depending on the result from the other matches. But like I've said before, the tiebreaker did not happen as MEP was barely able to edge out these 2 teams by 1 point. At 7th place in Group B, and this is perhaps the biggest surprise of the entire tournament so far, was Team Liquid. They started the day with 5 points, but they dropped the first series against DC, who was in fantastic form. So that is not too surprising, I suppose, but as one of the favorite coming to the tournament, I feel like many people expected them to at least take a game or something. However, despite that, their hope of making top 4 was still looking great going to last series, They were up against a Secret who was on a 9-game losing streak at this point, and all they had to do was win at least 1 game to reach tiebreaker with MVP, 2 games to secure top 4. But surprisingly, they actually lost 0-2 to Secret. And losing every game on the last day meant that Team Liquid would finish second last in the group, and they will have to battle through the loser bracket in the main event. And finishing last in the group was of course Vici Gaming Reborn. They definitely had their chances to make top 4, even though it was small. However, they also failed to win any games on the last day as they went 0-4 and finished the group stage with 4 points. And this is how the matches panned out for Group B on the final day of group stage. And once again, this is the final standing for Group B. And with that, the bracket is set for the main event. As you can see, there will be some epic East vs West series in the upper bracket, not to mention the deathmatch between Secret and LGD in the lower bracket best of 1. And as heartbreaking as this may be, 2 of the Western fan favorite, Team Navi and Team Liquid, who both looked like they had great potential coming to the tournament, they will face off against each other in the lower bracket best of 1, and it will guarantee one of them finishing last at TI6. And this concludes my day 4 recap for the International 2016. As usual, you can check out all the amazing highlights from today here on my channel, as I'll post the links below. And as for the main events next week, I won't have time to upload much highlights and do any recap because I'll be going to Seattle to watch the main event in person. And I'm actually planning on leaving in a few hours as soon as I'm done with this video. However, I do plan on uploading all the highlights after I come back from Seattle, so stay tuned for that. And if you actually find these recaps useful, I'll do them after I come back as well, but I'll have to see. In the meantime, please consider subscribing to my channel and follow me on Twitter if you like my content. And as usual, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.